The Handkerchief by Great 78. Chapter 119. Remus's Story. Back home. It surprised him how quickly he'd come to think of this as home, considering he'd only lived here for a couple of weeks. Andromeda was pacing in front of the writing desk in his room when he apparated in. "Where the hell have you been?" His aunt turned blazing, dark blue eyes upon him. "I've been so worried." I only needed to go to Diagon Alley," Draco mumbled, chastised. "Draco, I know you think he who must not be named still believes you on his side, but too many people know that you're not. It only takes the wrong one." "I'm sorry, Aunt Andre. I was trying to check on something for Hermione, but it did not work out." She sank onto the small sofa near the window. "It's all right, Draco. I'm sorry to get upset. I've just had an incredibly stressful morning. Nymphadora's contractions picked up their frequency and intensity during the night. I think we'll be having a baby here soon." Draco could not help the smile that broke over his face. "Well, that's incredibly exciting." Seeing her downcast look, he stopped. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy?" "I am. Nymphadora is over the moon, and Remus has been wonderful. The son I never had. I only wish that Ted could be here. He would have been so happy to know that he was having a grandson." "He knew? Didn't Tonks tell you? The night he went on the run?" "No. She was always rather torn up about it. I didn't want to upset her by asking too many questions." Draco feared that he was about to divulge too much information about a baby that was not his own, yet again. He decided that he needed to tread lightly. Has Tonks told you what names she's considering for the baby?" he asked evasively. "Yes," Andromeda smiled. "She's told me that she's naming him Edward, after Ted, and they're going to call him Teddy, in honor of him." Draco sat next to her on the sofa. "She told that to Ted, too, that night. He did a diagnostic scan, and he saw that it was a boy. Tonks told him the name, then." At this, Andromeda broke down in tears, withdrawing a handkerchief from her sleeve to dab at her eyes. After a moment, she gathered herself and patted Draco on the hand. "Thank you for telling me this." He smiled at her, just as there was a knock on the door. A nervous and haggard-looking Remus poked his head around the corner. "Oh, good, Draco! You're back. Andromeda, she's asking for you." Andromeda and Draco stood quickly, hurrying into the corridor. She disappeared into another room, leaving Remus and Draco to stand awkwardly just outside the door. Draco turned to his former professor. "Did anyone call my mother?" "No," Remus said urgently. He seemed particularly on edge this morning, and with good reason. "We were waiting until you returned. We didn't want to alarm her, because you weren't here." "I apologize. I was trying to help Hermione locate something, hoping to save her the trouble of going to look for it." Remus looked as though he had about a dozen questions, all of which he swallowed. "I understand. Can you call Narcissa?" Draco took out his coin, marked with an M, and spoke. "Tonks having the baby. Come if you can." 30 seconds later, there was a crack of apparition downstairs, followed by a flurry of footsteps on the stair treads. Narcissa whirled among the two men, doling out hugs and kisses on cheeks as she swanned past them and into Tonks' room. "Okay, she's here," Remus said unnecessarily. "Tea?" Draco asked. "Quite," Remus responded, and they turned together to go down the stairs. "So, tell me, what has Hermione told you about what they're looking for?" Remus asked, feigning nonchalance badly. He fiddled with his teacup, swirling and dipping the bag of Earl Grey until it was far too dark and bitter to be drunk. "I'm guessing that she told me about the same amount Potter told you, which is to say, nearly nothing." I see. And yet you went off to Diagon Alley to search for something specific. For her, or for them? Living in the shadow of the Dark Lord for some time, I was able to notice things, pick up on things, put things together. I figured out what they were looking for on my own, after doing some research. It's only after I told her that I knew what they were looking for that she confirmed it. Draco said guardedly. And you can't tell me? Remus asked with resignation, as though he already knew the answer. I'm not sure that I should. Hermione seemed to think that Dumbledore only wanted the three of them to know. I found out, purely by accident. There was a moment of silence between them, and then his former professor began to speak again. It's just very frustrating, you know, Remus said, looking down, to always be on the outside, never knowing the full truth about things, never truly belonging. The wizarding world has always shunned me, will always shun me, just because of something that happened to me when I was a small child. Draco nodded his sympathy as the older wizard continued. I was lucky enough to find friends at Hogwarts, friends I thought I could count on to always be honest and loyal, and within a few years of leaving school, 2 of them were apparently dead at the hands of the third, and I was alone again. I was unable to keep a job very long. I edited magical manuscripts for a publisher in London for a while, but I missed my deadlines too often, and my secret was found out. Then I gathered potions ingredients for an apothecary in Upper Flagley for a few years or so, and was able to procure wolfsbane that way. But there were always lonely jobs, because I was afraid of being too close to people. Right, Draco said. Then Dumbledore asked me to return. He had an idea, you see. I think he hoped to solve this mystery, this 12-year-old mystery of what happened that night in Godric's Hollow, and he thought I might be able to help somehow. And then one of my friends comes back, the one I thought to be a murderer for 12 years, only he wasn't a murderer. The third friend, the one everyone thought was dead, was. And after everything was figured out, I thought, finally, I would once again have a friend who knew me, who trusted me. Serious, Draco murmured. Serious, Remus agreed. And less than 2 years later, he's gone. Then Dumbledore. Then Moody. Hell, even Snape, that asshole. He was on our side, and then... At this, Remus broke off, seemingly tired and overwhelmed suddenly. Draco considered telling him that Snape was still on their side, but he knew that without proof, his word would likely mean nothing. So when Tonks wanted to marry me, it was a dream come true, and also the most frightening thing I had ever experienced, he said, chuckling. I can imagine, Draco smiled, picturing the ring inside the rucksack upstairs. So, the long and the short of it is that I'm used to it. I'm used to being the outsider, trusted by nearly no one, confided in by few. But Dumbledore once told me that Harry was our best hope, so I need to believe that, Remus said. As he sat and watched the man drink his bitter tea, Draco thought, why was it such a secret? Yes, there were certainly people that did not need to know, but Remus had proven himself time and time again. He was in the Order. Hell, save a handful of others, he nearly was all that was left of the Order, if that night leaving Little Whinging was anything to go by. Draco decided that some of the truth was better than none of the truth. They are looking for things. Things that you-know-who thought were important, or that he still thinks are important. Long ago, he did something. something dark. And until these things are found and destroyed, he can't be destroyed." Remus locked eyes with him, understanding dawning in them. "I see. So, if he is killed before these things are destroyed, he can come back, yes," Draco said grimly. "Well, then, by all means, they need to be destroyed." Remus tried the tea one more time, then gave it up as a bad job. He stood and poured it into the sink. "When the time comes, we have to give Harry a fighting chance." Draco nodded. "Remus, if there is ever a time that things look dire, how does the Order communicate? How do you contact Kingsley or the Weasleys, for instance?" Remus considered for a moment. "Generally we use flue calls. If the person's flue has ever been opened to another person's house for a call or for a visit, and the connection has not been severed, we're able to still use that connection. So, because Tonks lived here during her aura training, and Kingsley was a fellow aura, we're in touch with him. Kingsley and Arthur worked together on a few projects here and there at the Ministry, so their flues are connected. The Weasleys had to send their children back to the school via the flue in Minerva McGonagall's office some years ago, so that is open for calls." "But you have to be near a flue to contact them, and likewise they must be also?" Draco asked, a bit exasperated. To rely on such arcane ways of communication was frankly unreasonable. Remus nodded. "Here," Draco said, thrusting a blank galleon into Remus's hand. To his credit, Remus didn't assume it was a handout of money. "What's this, then?" Draco showed him how it worked, marking the galleon that corresponded to Remus's message with an R. "That's fairly ingenious," Remus said with a raised eyebrow. "A variation on the Dumbledore's Army coins, yes?" Draco blushed furiously. Hermione, and I kind of developed a similar idea to these together in our 4th year." Whatever thought Remus was about to articulate was interrupted by the pop of elfin apparition. Raffi appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. "Miss Nymphadora needs you now, Mr. Remus." The elf smiled kindly at the soon-to-be father, then looked at Draco. "And Miss Narcissa asks that you bring some ice water. Use the big pitcher in the pantry." At this, she was gone. Remus hurried out the door, and ran up the stairs, 2 at a time, without a backwards glance at Draco. Draco rushed to find the pitcher and fill it with water, performing a freezing charm, then a Defodio charm to break the ice into small pieces. He filled it with water from his mother's wand as he hurried up the stairs. Once outside Tonks's door, he stood, uncertain what to do. There was a good deal of noise issuing from the room, and he was not certain that anyone would hear a knock at the door. The door burst open again. Narcissa leaned forward, still looking at Tonks in the bed, then turned her head to yell, "Drake!" "Oh," she said as she spied him. "Sorry, darling, I didn't see you there. I'll take the water. The healer says it will not be much longer now." The door slammed in his face as a wail started up inside the room. Then, suddenly, there was total silence, as someone had cast a muffliato inside. Draco summoned a chair from his room and sat down to wait. He pulled out his coins, finding the one with the T on it. "How are you doing? How are things there?" About 10 seconds later, the coin warmed. "Sitting in alchemy, Tosser. What are you up to?" "Just sitting here, waiting for my cousin to be born." "Tonks is having the baby? Has she considered the name Theodore?" Draco laughed and replied, "Considered and rejected, I'm sure. So, how are things?" "Same. Shit really broke down here after Easter." "How so?" "Carrows missed the first few days. Recovering. Tortured, is the rumor." "And then?" Theo's answer came in parts, so that the words did not overlap as he read. They got their second wind. Really started to go after almost anyone, for anything. Blood doesn't matter, grades don't matter. You look at them funny, you've earned a curse. Salazar's ass, it sounded like things had taken quite a dark turn at Hogwarts. If the Carrows were tortured during Easter, it was likely because of the failures at Malfoy Manor. Snape. Theo responded, Haven't seen him in a few days. He stays out of everyone's hair. What about you? Did you hear what happened at the manor? Yes, in dribs and drabs. Blaze told me about the talisman. Smooth move. Draco sighed and answered, Lucky Luna was there. I mean, she probably doesn't feel so lucky. Well, you know what I mean. A moment of quiet, then Theo answered, Some people think you and Potter battled it out and Potter won. Some say you practically threw your wand at him and fell down crying. Somewhere in between. I was too shocked to fight back much. But you cried. No, I didn't cry, you fucking wanker. You cried. Admit it. Draco shook his head in annoyance and fought down a laugh. He replied, Just keep me updated, will you? Do you ever see Neville? He comes out every few days to rile up the Carrows. I'll tell him you said hi. Thanks. I'll let you know when not Theodore arrives. Thanks. Stay safe, mate. You too, Drake. Chapter 120. The Wolf Who Cried Boy. The Witching Hour in the Bay. 4 hours later, after eating 2 apples, 3 bags of crisps, and a sleeve of biscuits, all of which he washed down with a large butterbeer, Draco had dozed off in his chair. He was startled awake by the door being flung open. It's a boy! Remus shouted at him, grabbing him by the hand and pulling him up with the apparent strength of 10 men. Crisps wrappers and biscuit crumbs flew everywhere in the excitement. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Are they... They're both sleeping. Tonks is exhausted. The baby was alert for a while, but fell asleep. He's a metamorph magus, I think. When he was born 30 minutes ago, his hair was black, but it's already lighter. It's almost red. Draco smiled wider. This child was in for quite a life, that was for sure. I'm going to Shell Cottage. I've got to tell Harry and the others. At Draco's hopeful look, Remus gave him a small nod. I assume your next question is, can you come with me? Yes. Then yes, but you will have to stay outside the wards. I'm not their secret keeper, so I can't take you inside with me, Remus stated. I understand. Are you ready to go now? Draco asked. Do you have your wand? The defense instructor in Remus would not allow him to forget it. Draco patted his pocket, where his wand and the miniaturized rucksack were stowed. Yes. Then let's go. Remus held out his arm for sight-along apparition, and with a twist they had landed on the small beach. It was nearing dark now, and Draco turned to look at the ocean, the moon rising slowly overhead. I'll be back shortly, Remus said, hurrying up the small path. He disappeared about 20 yards away. Draco wandered a bit, coming up on a small garden lined with flat white rocks. Next to this was a mound of earth, and it took Draco a minute to realize that, in the half-darkness, he was standing next to a recently dug grave. He looked down. There in the moonlight he could make out words written on one of the stones. Dobby's grave, he thought, with sadness, and more than a little guilt. I'm sorry, Dobby. I didn't mean for it to happen. He put his hand down to touch the stone, and the magical signature imbued within the stone reverberated inside of him, an echo calling back upon itself. He recognized this magic somehow. He inhaled sharply, realizing that the stone had likely been carved with his own wand. And yet, whilst it was familiar, it felt wholly outside of him. It was like trying on a pair of shoes that he had worn once every day, but that he had stopped wearing. The magic now felt familiar, but also foreign. Draco frowned slightly, unsure of what to make of this. He turned back to where he thought the cottage must be, wondering how long Remus would be, wondering if he would be able to bring Hermione out with him. After what felt like hours, but was likely only 30 or so minutes, Remus rematerialized, followed closely by Hermione. Draco rushed to her, picking her up in his arms as Hermione wrapped her legs around his waist. "Don't mind me," Remus said dryly from a few feet away. "Oh, Remus, I'm sorry, Hermione sputtered, but the older wizard waved his hand dismissively. "I'm only joking with you." He turned to Draco. "Your aunt and mother and I will likely either be busy or sleeping all night, and won't be able to keep track of the comings and goings of a young man in love. I will ask Pym to check in on your birds for you, and I will see you at breakfast." And with Remus's crack of apparition, they were alone. Hermione rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I didn't know you had pet birds. You've never mentioned them. What kind are they?" Honestly, I don't know, actually." Draco chuckled, rubbing his hand over the wild tangle of her hair. "They just kind of appeared one night in the Room of Hidden Things, so someone must have vanished them. Their arrival was kind of helpful to me. We had just, well, that is to say, I'd told you that we should no longer see each other. I was such a stupid asshole. It's in the past, Draco." "Well, soon after that, the night of the Gryffindor versus Slytherin match, I opened the door to the room, and there they were."
"Birds?
She hugged him tightly around his waist, pressing a kiss upon his chest.
What color are they?"
"Yellow. They're little. There's 6 of them. There used to be 7, but—" He closed his eyes and willed the image of the dead bird and the dead Lopi out of his brain. "One died. It flew into the cabinet and got stuck."
"I'm sorry, Draco," Hermione said, "but I think you should know that I may have conjured them and then vanished those birds. I was trying out a spell to conjure them, and it worked, but I was upset about us, and I vanished them. So you've had them all this time?"
Draco drew her in for a kiss, taking in the gardenia scent of her hair, the taste of red wine on her tongue. "I have."
"That's adorable," she said.
He laughed at this. "I've missed you," he murmured.
"You saw me less than 3 weeks ago."
Hermione smiled against his neck, cupping her hands to his nape to pull him down to her. She nipped hungrily at the slight stubble of his skin on his throat, moaning softly. "It wasn't enough," he whispered, taking the shell of her ear between his teeth. "It's never enough." She slid down his body so that one foot touched the ground again, the other still gathered around his hip. She rocked into him, pressing herself against him longingly. It was his turn to moan. "Is there somewhere private we can go?" he asked. Without a word, she grabbed him by the hand and took off running, tugging him to the right, further down the beach. After about 30 seconds of running, she stopped and pointed ahead.
"There's a small bay just there. It's hidden. The rocks stretch out in such a way that you have to be nearly upon it before you see it. I usually come here to think or read a bit during the day. The cottage gets very crowded, what with 8 wizards and a goblin living in such tight quarters." Draco started towards it with her in tow, but Hermione stopped him. "I need to go back and ask Luna to cover for me. Everyone should be going to sleep soon, but if anyone thinks to check our room before she turns out the lights—"
"I can do it," he said quickly, not wanting to let her go back, even for a moment. He removed his coins from his pockets, looking through them until he found the one marked with B. "Can you ask Luna to tell everyone that Hermione went to bed?" Blaze's reply came back about 10 seconds later. "One moment." A minute later, during which Hermione and Draco kissed with increasing fervour, his coin warmed again. "Hang on," Draco said urgently, ready to move his witch to this private bay and ward the hell out of it. He took out the coin and read, "She will. Says to watch out for sand snabbles." He laughed and replied, "Thanks, we will." "Come on." He smiled and grabbed her hand and ran ahead of her to the bay. They raced together down the beach, laughing into the slight night breeze. Once inside the small clearing, Draco added wards and notice-me-not charms. Hermione removed her handkerchief from her cuff and enlarged it into a blanket, spreading it on the ground and adding a cushioning charm. Draco lit his wand and propped it up against a few rocks nearby to cast a soft light in the clearing. When they were satisfied, they turned to look at each other from across the blanket. Now that he had a moment to look at her properly, he was bowled over by her beauty. A few weeks with proper rest, warm showers, and real food had returned a pinkish glow to her cheeks and a glossy shine to her hair. Hermione was always beautiful to him. Even amidst the terror of the drawing-room at Malfoy Manor, she had been beautiful. But tonight she was perfect. He approached her slowly, almost as though he was afraid she might disappear. A daydream in the starlight, a trick of his mind. But when he reached her, when he touched her hands and found them to be solid, the dam inside them both burst. They fell into each other's arms, both lowering themselves to sit on the transfigured blanket. She was so warm and soft, so real and alive under his touch. Draco's hand skated up her side, and she moaned at the feel of his hand rubbing along her torso and back. She was so eager for him, but he willed himself to slow down, to make the night amazing for them both. He still had one great secret that he had not revealed to her. The prophecy. He had no idea how true it was, how true it would be, but he did not want to take the chance. If this was his last time with his witch, he would do everything he could to make it count. "You're so perfect, so amazing. I love you so much," he said, his voice cracking a bit with the force of his words. "I love you too, Draco," she whispered softly as she laid back on the blanket. He lay down next to her, pulling her to rest atop him on the blanket. Behind her the stars twinkled almost as brightly as her eyes. They looked close enough to touch, or maybe he just felt like he was flying. Either seemed plausible. Draco looked up at her in wonder. Merlin. She was everything. So perfect, so beautiful. They took their time with each other, soft kisses and sweet caresses in the moonlight. They moved together in tandem, looking into each other's eyes, copper meeting silver, with unfettered joy. As they did so, both of them made silent yet understood promises to each other, for their love, for their future, for always. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Handkerchief by Great78.